I'd like to call the March meeting of CUB to order. This particular time, I see no one here from the general public, so we will dispense with item number 2 on our agenda. Item number 3 calls for the approval of the minutes of our prior meeting. We all received this in our packet. We've all had the opportunity to review it. This time, I will entertain any corrections, additions to the minutes. Hearing none, I will ask for a motion and a second for their approval.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by like sign. All right, let's move on to item number 4, which is the approval of the pension plan audit for fiscal year ending June 30th of 17. Joe, I don't know if you or Jim, okay, Jim's one's gonna be, I should have looked up faster, shouldn't I? Jim,
I was trying to be Johnny on the spot for you.
you definitely are, sir, thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it, Board. My name is Jim Brewer. I'm with Brown Jacob McDaniel CPAs. We're your auditor for the pension plan of CUB, and we performed the audit for the year ended June 30th, 2007 of the Pension Trust Fund. You should have a copy of that package statement in front of you, and I'm going to begin on page 2 of the packet, which is our auditor's report on your financial statements. And basically what this report says, it indicates that we've audited the statements of the pension plan, which consists of the statement of fiduciary net position as of June 30th, 2017, and the related statement of changes in fiduciary net position for the year then ended, and the related notes. It goes on to describe that these financial statements are the responsibility of management and of your employees, and that our responsibility as your auditors is to give an opinion as to whether the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with accounting standards generally accepted. So basically, we perform certain audit procedures to assure ourselves that our opinion is justified. And we do believe that the procedures we have performed support that opinion. On the next page, the first paragraph is our opinion, and it indicates that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the respective fiduciary position, net position for the Clinton Utilities Board pension plan as of June 30th, 2017, and the changes in fiduciary net position. In addition, there's certain required supplementary information that supplements your financial statements. It's required by the Government Accounting Standards Board, and it is included in this report on pages 4 and 5 and 17 through 20. And basically, we're giving our opinion in relation to the financial statements on that information as well. There's an emphasis of matter paragraph in our report that indicates that this report does not attempt to present the financial statements of the City of Clinton, of which you are a department. And then in addition, finally, since we performed the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, in addition to auditing the financial statements, we're issuing a report on our consideration of the controls over the accounting for the pension plan. And that report is found at the back. On the next page, I just want to bring your attention to the management discussion and analysis. This is required supplementary information that is prepared by management, and it's kind of like a highlight of the financial statements. And I think these 2 pages will give you a wealth of information about the plan and its performance during the year, and then some looking ahead to the next year. That's not an audited statement, but it is provided by management. I'm not going to go through the statements in any detail at this point. I do want to direct your attention back to page 21, and that's where our other report lies. And to summarize, I'm not going to read this verbatim, but basically this report indicates that we have reviewed the management's controls over and accounting controls over the pension plan financial statements in order to determine our auditing procedures on the financial statements. So we're not attempting to give an opinion on the controls of management, but we did consider them. As part of our consideration, nothing came to our attention that we felt was a significant deficiency in control or a material weakness that could cause the financial statements to be materially misstated.
And then finally, we also have to consider the compliance of the plan to make sure that it's in compliance with laws and regulations and any provisions of contracts, and that we did not identify any instances of noncompliance. So that's the long way to say, basically, this is what we would consider a clean report. There's no findings, and we don't have any deviations from accounting standards. So that's all I have to present, and if anybody has any specific questions about our report or the financial statements, I'd be happy to address those at this time.
I have a few questions. Did you take an analysis, and I don't know if it's the role of this audit to do this, but did you look at the asset allocation and make any analysis about the appropriate nature of where we're currently allocated in our investments?
We don't look at that as far as what management has determined is appropriate, but we do review that what management has decided is the appropriate allocation is in fact the allocation in the plan.
To help you with that, Zach, a little bit, we have an investment policy that USI helped us compile, and the board approved that, and that's what we go by, and that's what he verifies that we follow that investment policy.
So I was talking with Ernie. So maybe later on in the year, I suspect that USI will come and talk to us.
Right.
And,
We have them come and report periodically about how things are going and what we're doing. We like to get them when we have a change or something, because they're going to bill us whenever they show up.
Yeah.
So we're trying to save money on that and just use them when we need them. That in your packet you have this right here, the valuation, the actuarial valuation, and that will tell you what USI has compiled. And if you look at that on that third page, that kind of shows you there's a difference in the way GASB shows what percentage funded you are and the way the actuaries do it. Years ago, the GASB group decided they had a better way of doing it. The actuaries disagree with that. They say that their way is better, and from the actuarial standpoint, we're 87.25% funded where we need to be. So, but in that also, they talk about the investment strategy, I believe. I could be mistaken. That's
You're
probably-
finding that if you do, Dudley. I can also say, because it's an ongoing process on how we deal with the pension funds and how we fund it. And really, much of that is out of our hands, because there is an actuarial formula that is mandated by, and the consideration is salaries, age, investment, return on investment. They look at mortuary tables and mortality tables rather, and they come up by mandate what the minimum annual required contribution is in order to meet state law that you fund a program, because obviously this is designed to meet the needs of today and the promises that you made to your employees as they age and then finally retire, that there's sufficient funds there that meet the requirements that you've set forth in your plan. So what does it take to fund that? If it takes $100,000 to fund someone's retirement plan, or 200, or whatever that number is, you don't have to pay that all in the first year, but you've got to make a contribution to that, assuming the investment return over the number of years that they have left. So that number, we have no control over what that minimum is. If we don't meet that minimum, then we are in violation, and that's when these folks here, and with USI folks and everybody, would be raising all kinds of flags. We here have never been under that minimum requirement, and actually, for the past 7 or 8 or 9 years, we have exceeded that minimum in order to work on this 87% funded. As you know, I think Knoxville is 45% funded, the city of Knoxville. I mean, it is in terrible shape. Memphis is worse than that, and TVA is worse than that when they fund. So the rule of thumb has traditionally been, if you were 80% funded, that is the rule of funds saying that 80 and above, you're in good shape. Anything below 80, you need to start looking at increasing your funding, and anything below 50, you really need to make some dramatic steps in order to assure that you can meet your funding for your requirements. So when we look at what was 82 or something like that, Dudley, and now we're at 87, we
Right here.
yeah, we see that as a significant increase towards funded. Now, the city, under the state plan, while the state is not that well-funded, the city is 100%, I believe, or right at it.
They are.
Funded for what their requirements are. And eventually, I think we'll get there too, but the 80% has always been our benchmark.
What's the relationship between 87% of the funding ratio and then on page 4, the 63.63%?
There's a difference between the GASB ruling, because the GASB ruling takes a difference in how that is accounted for. And they look at if you close the doors today, where are you in your funding? Not where the actuarial looks at like a mortgage on your home. If you had to pay it off today, that's you certainly owe that money. I mean, that's where you're at, but you pay for that over the life of the mortgage. And as long as you meet your monthly payments, you're in good shape. And that's the short term, not unless you all want to help me with that, but that's the layman's way, I think, of trying to explain how that goes. And that GASB only came into effect, what was it, GASB 67 and 68, probably 3 years ago,
Yeah.
or 4, something like that.
4 years.
Where they changed that, and part of the reason that they did that is because places like Detroit were defaulting on their pensions. And that's when they also brought, with the GASB, that brought that to the balance sheet, the liability to the balance sheet. So where do you line up with that GASB number, irrespective of what that is? As long as you meet your minimum annual required contribution, then you really don't have a problem with how that goes either.
And if you look here, our annual required contribution for this fiscal year that they're reporting on was $1,033,000. And we put in 1.68 million, so we are working to get that number up every year.
What do we want that number to be? Do we have a goal?
I mean, we'd like to get 100, but you can't do it in 1 year, you know. But that's where you'd like to get to.
Well, because to do that, and some have, but you disproportionately move cash into an account that does nothing more than move that percentage number, because it doesn't decrease a liability or increase a liability, but it restricts funds to cash funds in order to raise a percentage on a calculation that I don't know of any of the professionals in this room think that it makes good sense to do that. And that's why there's a great argument from the actuaries as to why that GASB is not really reflective of what a true number should be. But it's certainly a percentage that has gotten everybody's attention. And we gave a lot of credence to that when this came into effect in terms of the impact. We had a big board item where we had the actuaries come in and explain all that, and we'll be happy to have that done again. unless you all can help us about where you all think that, which number is the most valid and depictive of the financial strength of what our pension plan is. Because we got a little bit of bad press down at the city with their auditors over there, and I know you're aware of that. We've challenged that, which I think squared some of that away. But Zach was the recipient of some of that bad press on, inferred that it was eventually going to get back to the taxpayers of the city in order to fund our pension plan. So we really tried to help them with that.
So in our auditor's opinion, you know, I'm a 30,000 foot up. It's healthy or it's not. It's in trouble or it's not. It's great or it's not. What I want to hear is that it's great or it's not. So what I'm feeling it's great. I'm feeling what I'm seeing is great, but I'm not an auditor.
Right.
And I want to hear somebody not on this side of the table tell me that everything is great. Or it's not.
Well, I
That
would,
makes sense?
it does, it does. What I could say that I'm able to say would be, the financial position of the plan, which is the trust fund, is in a good position. It made a great return this year. The investments made good return. They may, I don't want to say it, but they may have outpaced the market for that time frame a little bit, but it was a really high return last year. So the investments are performing very well. And to mirror what Greg said, it's true. I mean, whatever assets are not in the plan, and you had to shut down today and pay everybody their money, it would come from the board, from the utility system. So it's one pot of money or the other. So depending on
But I
how
think
soon you
you've
put
got
it
a
into
fair
the trust
question,
fund.
and I don't know if you or if USI, you know, are the best people to answer that question, because we've asked and answered that a million times. That's where we get to this 80%. You know, as a board member, the question is, are we, in terms of what is required, are we meeting and exceeding that?
Right.
And if so, are we playing catch-up, or are we actually exceeding the minimum over time?
Gotcha.
You know, and I think that that's a fair question, and I think that you can respond to,
Yes,
can you not?
based on that comment, absolutely. So for the past 4 years that are present in this report, in fact, if you look on page 19, or excuse me, page 18, it compares the required contribution to the actual contribution. And every year, it was significantly higher.
And does that represent a trying to backfill from a deficit position?
No.
No,
Not
it does not.
necessarily, yeah, not necessarily. I'd have to go
No,
back and look.
necessarily, because it doesn't. Because that would have meant that it was somehow deficient.
Right.
You see?
Yes.
And it's never been deficient.
That's a fair statement. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
true, yes.
What rate of return do you assume for the investment?
7.5 is what the actuaries use, yes.
Yeah, we were 5.28 above that this year at the 12.78 return.
Yeah, the 2 years before, though, we
Yeah,
were considerably below that.
We kinda got whacked, yeah.
And that's probably a conversation that we'll have with USI, because, you know, return is always going to be directly correlated with risk. And so one of the things that I'd be interested in talking to Bob about is what's our level of risk? And, but, you know, that's, I think, outside the purview of what these gentlemen were doing.
Page 12 has the
Asset
breakout.
allocation.
Looks like it's all mutual fund, or pretty much all mutual fund.
Yeah.
And if you look at page 15, it actually has the long-term expected rate of return on each of those categories. That's something that the actuaries determine.
Chairman, I'm very pleased with the audit, and I would move that we approve the audit, subject to anyone's discussion or disapproval, but I move we approve this.
Thank you for the motion. Is there any additional discussion and/or questions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a second for
I'll
Mr.
second
Farah's motion.
I'll second that.
Ms. Violet seconds that. All those in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Any opposed by like sign? Jim, thanks a bunch.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you all. We certainly appreciate your service. All right, let's move on to item number 5, which is the approval of the vouchers. Again, it's an item that we have had in our packet. We've all had the opportunity to review those. At this time, I will ask for any questions, comments, additions, or corrections. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion and second for the approval of the vouchers.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by like sign. Let's, pardon me, let's move on then to item number 6 on our agenda, the approval of the monthly reports for the month of January. We'll call on Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you remember last month, I showed you this degree days thing, and January was, for this year, was far ahead of last year and far ahead of the 10-year average. So we were hoping that would result in a good month, and obviously it did. The net income in the electric department ended up being $821,000. The net income in the water department was $28,792. So both departments had a good month. You know, if you look at where we're at on the year, we're doing quite well. We're $798,000 ahead of the forecast in the electric department, and we're $15,000 ahead of the forecast in the water and sewer department. But again, if you look back at that chart there, you see what February's done here. That's a low month. So I can't say that we're going to stay that far ahead. Those numbers shift a lot in a month depending on the weather. And Greg's always used the phrase, we're kind of victims of the weather, so slaves to the
We
weather.
are slaves to it, yeah.
So that's why sometimes it's hard for me to project exactly what's going to happen each month. But overall, we're doing real well. Our main difference is to make that revenue is our sales less power cost is about $400,000 ahead of the forecast. If you take those two numbers, you know the sales are down from the forecast, but the power cost is up. And the reason the sales are down is more industry than residential. The residential sales are up about $500,000 over what I had forecasted, but the industry is running behind. SL and some of those have really slowed down on what they're doing. But our expenses are about $300,000 ahead of the forecast. I mean, under the forecast, and since we're borrowing that money, that $7 million, since we haven't just pulled it all in, we're drawing it down as we need it. Our interest expense is a lot less than the forecast because I budgeted like we're going to get that $7 million right up front. So you add all that together, and you're $798,000 ahead of the forecast. The water and sewer department sales are still lagging, but our expenses are well under. They're $92,000 under the forecast. Some of that is timing with different things like leak detection. I don't know where Dan's at on that and how much of that he's going to get done by the end of the year. But we're doing good in both departments, is what I'm trying to say. So I'll answer any specific questions you might have.
I had a question. I was asked, if we look at December,
Okay.
and go down to the water and sewer,
Okay.
that $93,000 number,
Right.
they were, I was asked, like, why is the difference? I said, I really don't know. I said, I'll ask. So I'm sure there's a good explanation. I just didn't know it.
I have to go back to my notes for last month. Part of it was you got a three payroll month. You know, that's $55,000 extra that's added to expense for that 1 month because we pay bi-weekly. Twice a year we have 3 payrolls. In the water department, that amounts to $55,000 that comes right off that bottom line.
Okay.
So that's the bulk of it. And
You have 43,000 in pump maintenance from the year before.
right? And a lot of it's just time and how the expenses hit, you know?
Okay.
If-
But that didn't give anybody alarm, or it didn't me, because I'd have figured that you guys would have brought it to our attention, but I didn't have an answer, and I'll get back to the person. Thank you.
Okay.
I still don't have any alarm. I still very comfortable with it. I just wanted,
I understand.
yeah.
And we're good.
Actually, Dudley forecasted that. If you look over in his forecast, where he's got the column forecast year-to-date versus actual. So he does plan for those bad months when there's gonna be multiple payroll.
There's only two. There's two in a year, obviously, to go from 24 to 26. So those, unless it's a leap year or some god-awful year where you have 27.
Sometimes you get 27, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Not? I need a motion and second for the approval of the monthly reports for the month of January.
I have a motion, I'll second it.
Okay, got everybody jumping in on that one. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Item number 7, project status report. We always call on Mr. Bowles first for the electrical department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your project status report for your electric department is before you on the monitor. We have four projects that we're tracking for you, all from your capital budget, all that you have approved. I can tell you overall that each project is proceeding on time and uneventfully, which is a good thing in our business. We had a little delay on breaker delivery for this substation project that might move us into the April timeframe instead of March, but that's beyond our control. We have begun installation of that. That won't change your total cost. It's just waiting on the breakers to get here. Threw us behind by a few weeks. And other than that, all the other work is as you see, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have relative to any of these projects or anything else we got going on.
Questions? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the water and sewer. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The number one item that we see is the project that we've been tracking ever since June of last year.
Yeah.
This project's on schedule and on budget. We work on that. We're doing a lot of that work in-house, so we work on it as we have time. The second item is a new project that was added as a result of the approval of the work order at our last meeting. And that construction now had a pre-construction conference with the contractor this afternoon. The equipment should be here by the end of June, so we're gonna see a lag where nothing's gonna happen, and then in about 6 weeks, everything's gonna happen for about $500,000, so we'll track that. And that project's also funded by a grant fund up to $365,000.
All right, man, open it up for questions. Are there any questions?
That estimated cost, is that net of the reimbursement by,
No, that includes it.
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we established we had about 167,000 or something like that was ours at our last.
Good memory.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to item number 8. And, pardon me, we're going to call on Mr. Bowles for this. It's work order number 660.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our last line construction project for the current fiscal year that we're in, for our crews to start on here shortly. Mahoney Road, we did a phase of construction and renovations down there several years ago. This is the second phase of that. It's one of our more veteran and longer copper lines that we're targeting as being a high-loss type of line, and that one that needs our attention, so it gets priority in the capital budgeting process. We had budgeted $190,000. After final engineering, it came in just under that, with a $17,000+ contingency, so we feel pretty good about the estimate as we start off. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but if absent any, we would ask your approval for Work Order 660 for our construction forces to proceed.
Are there any questions in regard to this capital outlay project, Work Order number 660?
Is this the amount that was in the capital budget,
190,000 was the budget.
coming in under?
What would you expect,
Hey,
Charles?
Let's see the completion.
I'm with you, CP. Let's see what we close at. Any other questions or comments? I'll ask.
We approve the work order?
Thank you, Mr. Farah.
Second.
Mr. Price, we have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. That passes. Let's move on to item number 9. This is our revisions to a couple of CUB policies, the spill prevention and the OSHA safety compliance. And Mr. Bowles, I'll direct you to inform us on that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. These are two of our working policies that we have to keep up with and keep updated. These are very minor revisions. In fact, we had the SPCC, Spill Prevention, Control, and Countermeasures Plan in front of you less than a year ago. It's back before you again due to the upgrades and enhancements that we've made at our Claxton sub. This is one of the few items that we are regulated by the federal government and have to provide this document in concert with federal regulations to be able to show them that we have control over and measures in place in the event of an oil spill, because we manage such huge quantities of oil in our substations out here at these remote sites. So the change, in essence, and what we included is just the executive summary of the plan. But in a nutshell, the change is the update of the plan to reflect the enhancements that we made at our Claxton station, which even further improved our standing in terms of our SPCC plan with the federal government. And I'll be happy to go to the next one real fast, because with these being revisions, Mr. Chairman, unless there's going to be a big discussion, let me just say that the OSHA Program of Safety Compliance is our public sector plan. It is TOSHA, the Tennessee Department of OSHA. They are the ones that come out every year or so, and they'll conduct a inspection. They'll sometimes inspect the electric facilities. They'll sometimes inspect Dan's facilities, whether it be water or wastewater. And on occasion, they'll even go into the field and check the crews and how they're working, and we'll get a report and so forth and so on. This is the plan that undergirds all those activities. And the revision, the last revision was in 2013. It's required that we revise it every 5 years. And upon review, there was only one item worthy of revision, and that was a request which went to all public sector plans. It wasn't that Clinton's was deficient, but all public sector entities were asked to insert a statement about notification in the event of an injury where there's a loss of an eye or the severing of a limb within a certain amount of time. So those encompass your the nutshell revisions, any other revisions you saw in the packet, if you got really bored and decided to open those gigantic documents and read through the changes, were strictly wordsmithing and editing. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions you have.
We got it open for questions. Again, we had the opportunity to review it. Had problems staying awake on some of it, but anyway, that's got a SOP on that.
Staying awake writing them.
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
We have a motion second to approve the revisions to the two policies listed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by like sign. Item number 10 is the approval of our contract to audit accounts. Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last time we did this was 3 years ago. We agreed to a 3-year deal, and what the auditors that you just saw, Brown, Jake, McDaniel, what they're proposing for this year is $14,800 for the electric department, $66.50 for the water department, and $87.50 for the pension plan. Now, if we agree to do a 3-year deal, they'll, as we have before, they will only increase by the consumer price index each year, not to exceed 3% annually. Now, I did a little spreadsheet for you here to kind of show you how that works. So this year we paid $14,351 and those amounts. The proposed amounts, the top line, these are the increases we've had over time. So you can see they're very fair in what they're doing there. My son works for a CPA firm in Atlanta, and for an $85 million a year organization to have a cost like that, he says that's unreal. He says that's unreal, and they do a super job. I know Vicky's worked with them. She knows that they're just good people, and they do a thorough job. They're not going to let us Shanghai anybody for their licensing for sure, but I think they're great, and I think we need to stick with them. And if it was my call, I would say take the 3-year deal, or we can do 1 year. It's up to the board.
All right, well, let's open that up to discussion in regards to either an annual or I'm gonna call it a 3-year lock with a with a CPI increase not to exceed 3% annually.
Do we get new, because I asked this of the city about using, I think they use Pew, and I was wondering the wisdom of every now and then changing and have somebody else have a fresh look. And Pew was basically told or was informed that Pew changes the people that looks at the books, and it's not the same person year over year looking. Do we know, does Brown, Jake, McDaniel, are they changing sort of the auditors they assign to us?
They rotate around.
Okay.
Yes, sir. They do. They have different ones here, different years. Some of that's through attrition. Now, I've had other auditors years ago and big firms, and what they do is they send in their cheapest crew they can right out of school, and then we end up training them and explaining to them everything there is, and then they've got a little chip on their shoulder. They're going to try to find something, and show where you've messed up. But these people know what they're doing. They do a lot of utilities, and they're very good at what they do.
I have worked with them before, and I have been very pleased with their work, and I think that's an excellent price for what we're getting from them. And I agree, Zach, sometimes it's good to have new eyes on it, but sometimes it's good to have somebody familiar with us.
Right.
And we don't have to
Hold their
have the
hand.
same conversation again, trying to explain everything. And I would assume they would change some people around internally, but
I think that's the key, because
Yeah.
I know when or especially if I'm looking for an error, I look over that same error 4 times because I already think I know what it is. So sometimes Dudley and I have done that. Here, take a look at this.
Well, you gotta have
and
fresh
see
set
if
of
you
eyes.
Yeah.
see what you see, and sometimes it's easy to find, which is why they're big enough to where they send a team out here, and that team, maybe you'll have the lead guy to help them show what to do, but there are fresh faces almost all the time.
Have we ever had another accounting firm make a pitch to do this for us?
Yes, sir. We have. We went out for bids. I mean, the last time we went out, and it's been a while ago, of course, Joe Brown has changed firms several times too. I mean, he worked with, Herb Ward was the one that hired him. And then as Herb changed firms, he brought Joe with him. And then we went out when Joe went on his own. We stayed with the firm that Herb was with, well, as long as he was there. We had Coopers and Liber, and I remember, you know, at that time for just electric, it was $27.5.
Yeah,
You remember?
something unbelievable.
Yeah.
That was back
So,
about
so
1990.
it really wouldn't be an issue of getting the best deal that we can. When I first came here, we were paying $1,500, you know, for the audit, but we got a $1,500 audit. So you can't skimp on getting quality professional people. But I think we have that. We just happen to have that at a very reasonable rate. And a lot of the utilities in this area, I think Lenore City may use them, and I think the Sevierville has used them, and I mean, still do. I mean, I think he's got 4 or 5 in this area. So they're very familiar, because GASB is a different, and FERC is a different uniqueness that is only for utilities. So they're very familiar with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and what you've got to do in order to meet that. And of course, they work well with the TVA too.
Ernie, you like?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're very thorough, and when they go in to look at a work order or a bid that we've worked on or a service contract, they'll come over with their list of questions, and, you know, bids, and how does this stack up with your procurement policy? And, you know, we have to show them and demonstrate that and prove to them. So, yeah, I like them a lot.
So I guess the question is it 1 year or 3 years?
That's, like I say, I'm willing to listen to anything, whether it's a discussion, a motion, or what have you.
I don't see any advantage to doing it yearly if we're satisfied and have been for.
Vicki, I'm interested in what your opinion is, because I highly respect it, and so.
Well, I appreciate that. We did 3 years just because you can tie in a better price, and we had no issues whatsoever. I would recommend the 3-year. Just we know we like them. We know they're good. We know you all have enjoyed working with them. So I would do the 3 years and get the better price. Is what I would recommend.
I'll make the motion that we approve the contract with Brown, Jake, and McDaniel, and I would move that fee for 3 years.
And I
With-
I'm sorry.
with no more than the 3%.
That's
I was gonna say, I think that's the premise under which.
Yeah, I think that's
that the contract
exactly,
is
that's the
offered.
understanding, yeah.
That's the contract, as submitted to us.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, thanks. I'm glad to hear that. We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by like sign?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to clarify just one,
Say, Mr.
while I
Frank.
can. I think the phrase liking to work with the auditors was not really appropriate, you know.
I didn't mean that.
Just- Yeah, where they're fine folks, but I just soon never see them again my whole life.
Can I change my statement to they were a real pain in the butt?
They really make me show
Yes.
everything I'm doing.
That's right.
I'll retract those words.
Thank you.
Well, I like that comment that they do dig.
Well, they're very thorough. You
Yes.
know, it's really what you want, and when you have good auditors, they actually help you do a better job, because we do a lot of the worksheets, you know, of course, they review all of those, but by doing worksheets, you know, you do a better job of reviewing the policies and procedures of how you conduct business.
Which is the purpose of an audit, so that's good.
Exactly.
I'll say it's my group, the people that work under me, Tommy Meredith, Mike Dayton, and those people, they do a super job. And they work with these people but a lot of the credit goes to my people. They just do a great job providing us monthly with accurate reports, which makes the year-end report easy and accurate, so.
That's good.
Other business, Mr. Fay?
Yes, sir. CUB has received a letter from the Arbor Day Foundation, which is headquartered in Lincoln, Nebraska, recognizing CUB as a tree-lined USA utility for the 17th straight year. And as you know, CUB is committed to the high standards of quality tree care and worker training and best tree care practices. That gets us listed in the papers in New York City, does it not, EB? And
Sir.
So I mean, we're very proud of that. We try very hard to do right, and the Arbor Foundation has recognized that. So we're 17 consecutive straight years with the Tree Line USA. Norris is the first tree-lined city in the country, so they love us up there, and part of that is because of the way that we treat their trees and every other tree and how we dig. It makes a difference. And each year to support the national and state water fluoridation programs and recognize water treatment facilities that are doing an outstanding job of providing consistent level fluoride in the water supply, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, recognizes public water systems that achieve optimal fluoridation levels with an annual water fluoridation quality report. And for water systems to be eligible, its performance must be documented by the state and the water fluoridation reporting system and meet the strict standards for accuracy and water fluoride treatment, daily monitoring and reporting. Now, there are over, and I looked it up so I know, there are over 50,000 water utilities in the U.S., almost as many McDonald's, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. There is a slew of them, and there are over 500, which I didn't know. There's over 500 in this state of Tennessee. So for the year 2016, which is the year under review, 1,360 public water systems that are represented in 29 different states have received the CDC Water Fluoridation Award. And today, just today, CUB was notified that by the East Tennessee Regional Department of Health that we are a recipient of that award, and they will have an award ceremony next month in Chattanooga, and we'll be represented there to receive that certification. So the 50,000 utilities, 500 in Tennessee, 1,300 received this award, and I think maybe 60 of the 500 in Tennessee did, and we were one of them. So that's news we wanted to share. Now, yesterday, I returned from the TVPPA offices in Chattanooga, where the leadership met for 9 straight hours. And I'm going to say that slowly because it wore me out. 9 straight hours. I mean, it was a working lunch. They had a little box lunch they had there to discuss strategic planning on how to address the ongoing and growing impact of DER, which is distributed energy resources, on the local power systems and the broader imperative of contract flexibility to address these emerging technologies. I like to, because it's a complex problem, I want to periodically keep you in the loop. Now, DER, distributed energy resources, are physical and virtual assets, like our virtual power plant made up of physical assets. They are deployed across the distribution grid and they are typically close to the load, which they are here, and usually are behind the meter, which can be used individually or in aggregate to provide value to our grid. Both residential, commercial, and industrial customers have an increased interest in DER. And that's solar, storage. These are these big batteries that now Tesla's got batteries the size of refrigerators you put in your garage to store the solar panels in order to use them in the dark of the night. There are also parts of energy efficiencies if you're using a Nest thermostat or LED lights. We've talked about this before. And now all those things that can affect demand management. Individuals with third-party DERs, third-party energy resources, behind the meter is behind the retail meter. So we have distribution lines, and it comes into your house, and we have our meter there. That's the retail meter. So now what they're going to do is behind the meter, so we never see it. So if they have, for example, solar, that solar will be tied into their system inside their house behind our meter. We never see it. So individuals with third-party DERs behind the meter expose the utility to operational and safety concerns as well as a loss of revenue. So if you have, and I'll use solar for example, but these emerging technologies are going into hydrogen and other things too. Wind, people are talking about putting windmills up. But this behind the meter, for them to use that, if they don't have the right switchgear in there, we're potentially compromised out on the lines because essentially they're generating and it comes back out on our system. So if we have a power outage and they say, oh, no problem, I've got a solar, let me turn that on. They turn that on, it not only goes through their house system, but it comes back out through the meter and back out over the lines. It's a potential safety hazard. So this is a complex issue, and the LPCs, in order to make a difference on how we handle that, we need to be in the mix and offer competitive facilities to accommodate what the demands are. Now, we have got one developer that has, not on this system, but on a system that touches us, that is looking to develop a solar residential subdivision. So what the developer will do in order to catch them in, they'll build solar panels within the subdivision that serve the subdivision, and each homeowner then will buy, as part of the lot price, a piece of the solar facility. And then that, through the grid, will go out, and each house then will be able to receive whatever portion of that solar energy is there. So you can buy solar panels on Amazon, you see. As the technology improves and the price comes down, it's going to be an ongoing issue. In the West, it's already very prevalent. So we are just, although I've brought the board up, it's been 5 years we've been talking about this, it's coming, it's coming. Well, it is coming, and it is now essentially here. So in order for Cub and other utilities to meet the needs, because now we have Walmart, for example, wanting carbon-free energy. That's part of the position in industries coming in. What can you offer that is new to the planet and carbon-free? So Walmart essentially wants to put solar up in their parking lot, you say, in order to say that they are energy carbon-free in what they do. We've got to answer the question on how can we become involved in that, because if it's behind the meter, we have no control over what they do, and we have a loss of energy. And as you can see, our load, because of efficiencies and other things, our load isn't going up, it's going down. You see, the reason we're not hurting is because we're more efficient with our virtual power plant and how we handle that. But we have got to have some access into how we can accommodate these carbonless products that are increasing in demand. if a customer comes to us, and the third parties are these groups that go out and solicit, just like you see these folks with water filters. You know, you would think you're drinking straight out of a lead cup, you know, with some of these folks, as they say, you don't know what you're drinking. We're going to see advertising like that, to where they will come in and they'll construct these things behind the meter. The school system has their net zero building out there. It is growing all the time. In order for us to get behind the meter, we have got to have flexibility in our contract, all requirements contract that we have with TVA. Because TVA says we cannot participate in solar, the utility cannot participate in solar, because that's looked at as generation. And our contract says that we cannot generate. So that's where the rub comes on this contract flexibility. I wanted to let you know that the meeting that we were in yesterday for 9 straight hours is trying to develop a strategy that will accommodate our ability to be competitive behind the meter with these emerging technologies and still survive the legal language that we're contractually obligated to with TVA. We spent 2 hours today with TVA here. I've been on the 3 different phone calls today with TVA, and we're getting back to this what we call a BNT, the Board Negotiating Team Committee, to discuss these very issues on how we can do it. But I don't want you to be blindsided, so I'm going to try to give you little bits of information, especially when it's relevant from yesterday, as to how this thing works and why it's important to us. TVA is suggesting tomorrow that there is going to be imposed a grid access charge. This is how it affects us. So TVA is hedging their risk by potentially imposing a grid access charge, which has nothing to do with the cost of electricity, other than they're raising the price to us just to be on the grid. And that's a penny a kWh, which is substantial, you see, on us. And the reason that they're doing that is they're covering their ability for their fixed assets. So where let's just say, make it easy, 10 cents, it's not this much, but we'll say 10 cents a kWh is what is the retail on what you're going to use. If you go behind the meter and you reduce by 1,000 kWh, we don't see anything on that. TVA doesn't see anything on that. We don't see anything on that. What we're suggesting is let us go behind the meter, provide this for them, and we will see something on that, and therefore TVA can see something on that. You know, and that's part of the flexibility. So it's a real deal. It's really complicated, and we are doing all we can to try to come to a workable agreement with TVA to give us the flexibility to address the concerns and the needs of our customers that they are asking us to provide. Should we not provide that, these third parties are already providing that, and that will just grow. And I just wanted to help keep you up to speed on that. Ongoing issues, so you won't be blindsided. That's all I have.
Any questions or comments in regard to what Mr. Fay has just presented to us? All right, if there is not, then what I will do, as is customary, I'll start down. Mr. Farah, any questions and or comments?
No.
Mr. Price?
No.
No, sir.
Ms. Bob?
Real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Been on the board for about a year, and as I learn more and more and start hearing in the paper and reading in the news and listening to the news, when other utilities are without power, you know, I'm not in your all's position, but what I am learning, I can tell that they don't have the infrastructure that we have.
They don't.
And when they're out of power for days and days, I keep thinking, if that were us, it wouldn't be that way. And I'm proud all over again of what our people are doing, our employees are doing, what our leadership's doing, and I'm just proud to be a board member of something that's going on as well as we have. I think it's all in this infrastructure, and you all were way before the curve on this, and I'm just proud of what we are doing, so
Thank you. You know, that reflects on the statements, and it will continue. When we had, TVA lost a drop to us on our river sub, MOD went down, and hands off, we were back on within 2 minutes. Now, that meant we weren't sending a crew out there to say, something happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it repairs itself, self-repairs itself. We're not sending a standby crew out there in order to patrol the line and open switches and redirect load and then close it back in, you say. So as time goes on, it has to have a positive impact on the expense associated with that. That's also quality of service, but also real dollars in terms of what does it cost us to do business. Thank you.
And to that end, if I could just append that, Tuesday of this week, at about 6 a.m., a large truck up close to the interstate, going through the subway or firehouse sub or whatever it is parking lot, clipped a telephone cable, kept on going, which the Clinton PD is investigating as we speak, dragging 3 poles with him, and we lost service out of our Buffalo Road station to the circuit that was affected. That was somewhere south of 600 customers. Once again, with Flizzer, because we've now got it scripted up there. Within 2 minutes, we had all but 186 customers back on, which is how it's designed. Remember, an average of less than or equal to 200.
That was Hunter's Trail because it was a radial upside, Hunter's Trail.
You can't have enough switches to get it, get a point of diminishing returns, but I'm saying that it worked again. There's no reason to believe that it's not going to work henceforth. It's not it's proven, and that's another example just Tuesday of this week.
Well, as terrible as those incidences are, it's like a fire drill. I mean, you can see what you can do, and it works, like you said, and that's great.
Any other comments? We're adjourned.